Hello, welcome again to another edition of Open Your Eyes. Hopefully this will help you guys understand Dapper and moving connection strings or SQL connection strings over to Dapper. At the moment I'm working on an ASP.NET Core application that needs some refactoring to that. This has a few connection strings in parameters, as you can see here. This is just from the application settings in the JSON config. It could be a web config, it could be anything, but basically this is just the config parameters that are passing to variables and in turn running a custom class that was created. What we're going to do as part of this is move the custom class to Dapper, and also we've got some mapping here where it returns a data set and maps it to a model. In this case it's an employee model. Nothing too great. So what we're going to do is replace pretty much all these lines of code, and I'm going to change the lines of code now in the next few clips. What I'll do, I won't put any commentary. You'll just go through with a little bit of please hold music and we'll make the changes. Then I'll go through and explain line by line why I changed it, how I changed it, and hopefully give you a better understanding of why those code changes were made. Welcome back. Click into the definition of get employees company ID. In here I'm using a library NUGET package called Lazy Cache. Using the caching service to instantiate it. That just means creating and giving access to that NUGET package. So if we go down to NUGET Package Manager under Tools in Visual Studio, you'll see it's an option sort of halfway down this choice list. It brings a sort of sub menu up, and I like to choose the Manage NUGET Packages for solution. In there you'll be able to browse and search for Lazy Cache. Because I've got it installed already, I'll just pick it from the options. There's the second one there, as you can see, and you can see it's Lazy Cache. Just defines a simple thread safe in cache memory. So back to the actual solution get employees method by company ID. So what we've got here now, as we say, we're going to get some caching. You don't have to worry about this. Look out for my another video, and we can explain how to get lazy cache and config settings. But for now, this is about Dapper and how to use Dapper to get data from the SQL server. So I've got my connection string. It's just a simple SQL connection string. I'll put a link down below for you guys to find out how connection strings are made up and samples. We've got the SQL command. In this instance, the SQL command will be a stored procedure, and we've got some parameters. Again, I won't go through stored procedures or parameters. That if you're interested, I can create another simple video around those. In this, in Dapper, we have another method called dynamic parameters. We have to create and start that up by giving reference. We can then add a parameter. So the way that the parameters work is you'll define a parameter name, so name of the parameter for the stored procedure, and then the value of that parameter. So in this case, I've got an array of parameter names, so potentially I could have 5 or 6, and I'll show you how that looks in the app settings. You'll see this particular stored procedure has only got 1. So when we split it using the split function, it will only create an array of 1. But in some stored procedures, if you have more than 1 or several, it will split it out for you. Let me see if I can find one that we've created here already. No. In any case, if you have more than 1 parameter, it will be split and it will create an array. Hence, the string array, all string arrays start with 0 based, so hence 0, so it will be the first parameter. And in here will be the company ID, which is the parameter that's being passed to this method. To create a connection, all you have to do is pass the connection string to a SQL connection, and then use Dapper using the connection query. I'm converting that, or the result of that, into an employee model. Very simple model, can be any model that you wish, as long as it meets the column name mapping is exactly the same. It will be able to map to the model. This is how we would use it. You use the SQL command, the query parameters here, and I add the command type stored procedure. I convert that already to a list of, in this case, employee models. So you'll see here it's a list of employees. It's a generic list, but it returns a list of employee. And then I look at employee if it has any. So if there's a result returned, if there is, then I will log this to App Insights. In this case, this is logging to App Insights and a few other logs for me. And I just return a list of employees. And that's what we've got here in this method. It just returns a list of employees. So, and if it doesn't have any records, it will return a null value into that list and log that as such. So as you can see, the heavy lifting really is done by the method, and in the main controller now, the employee, the method or the controller of get employees by company ID is very simple now. Compared to the 8 lines of code that we had before, we just instantiate the SQL read, which is here the way that I've liked to format my code, and then we just call the method within that, get employees ID, we pass that down, and again we just check if there's any data coming back. So from the list employees, potentially you would get null value. In this case, this will just check if this has any. So there's a quick little bug there. We just say with the exclamation mark before, just means it's not, so it's the reverse. It does not have any. If it doesn't return a result, so in this case if it's null, it would return OK, so a 200 OK to the controller, but there'd be no content in there. We could potentially put a response code in there to say, or give more detail on the response code, but it should be self-explanatory. We'll get a 200 OK, but there's no data returned, meaning no records are found. If there are records found, it will return an OK again, the 200, but we'll put it into a JSON array with this action result. So you'll see the response is a list of employees, and that's exactly what we would return. Even if it's just 1, it's a list of 1, but still a list. If there's an exception with any of that, even with the SQL code, it will return an exception here. We'll log that exception into the result, and we'll give a status code of 400. and the content will be the actual result here that we've created. Again, using Newtonsoft, this is another NUGET package, very handy, well worth your time to explore if you've not explored it before. And that's basically it, using Dapper to return a result in a controller, replacing the old method. So it does use ADO.NET, but it uses the best practices and will be much quicker than the majority of code that's out there. So well worth transitioning over if you haven't already. This has been Ed for Open My Eyes. If you need anything else, please let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, share and like. Thanks very much.